Located in the region of Jalisco, surrounded by a geographic and natural diversity, Guadalajara is an important center of culture, tourism, and innovation for Mexico. A metropolitan area in constant expansion, it grew from a colonial city in the center of the Atemajac Valley into the second largest urban agglomeration in Mexico, integrating former towns and small settlements of the outskirts of the city into the urban fabric, and expanding radially with informal settlements in the peripheries that are growing into natural limits, like the Primavera Forest to the west and La Barranca de Huentitán to the northeast, a canyon of 600 meters of depth, carved by the Santiago River and home to a great diversity of endemic species that since 1997 has been declared a natural reserve and protected area, as a way to counteract the effects of the unplanned growth into these ecosystems. So, based on the clear dissociation between the expansion of the urban system of the city of Guadalajara and the natural system of the canyon that defines its northeast border, the proposal, bordering symbiosis, seeks to blur this limit, integrating the natural areas into the urban system. The project objectives consist of connecting, integrating, and creating a transition between the city and the protected natural area of La Barranca, improving and proposing connections within the site and its borders, and creating a system of relations in different scales that include the definition of green open spaces and the integration of the different urban dynamics of the area. The site, located in the northeast peripheries of the city, is defined between the vile limit of the peripheral ring road to the south and the natural border of the canyon to the north. These low-income settlements grew from what used to be former historical towns or colonies, like the colonias of Huentitán and the industrial settlement of La Experiencia, into agricultural areas not destined for urbanization, therefore lacking in public infrastructure, services, and amenities, product of the self-constructed character and unplanned growth of these neighborhoods. In this sense, and understanding the growth of the city as an unavoidable process, guiding the occupation and densification of these areas to limit the expansion towards areas of risk or of natural value is necessary to both consolidate the existing settlements and provide infrastructure and amenities to the communities, integrating the existing natural resources into the urban dynamics and preventing further pollution and degradation of the national park. Based primarily on the condition of La Barranca as a natural border and protected area of the site, as well as on the existing green and open public spaces and the areas of risk, we first define a green system, a network of green corridors that act as protectors, defining an external border to the canyon to avoid expansion into the risk and natural reserve areas, and connecting the internal rivers to both rehabilitate them and make them into public and productive spaces for the existing settlements. Likewise, based on the main roads that connect to the city center and the peripheral ring road that acts as a border, as well as the existing public transport, the proposal defines a mobility system to enhance the transport network and create connections within the urban layout, as well as define alternative systems that seek to reach the canyon's limit to the agricultural town in the outskirts of the city and connect with existing infrastructure within the canyon. This enhanced connectivity also serves as a base to define attractors for the less consolidated and available non-utilized areas of the site, defining neighborhood and productive patches for new settlements to guide expansion, as well as possible transformation areas of the existing urban system due to the new dynamics of the proposed border as a recreational and touristic walkway that integrates the metropolitan scale centers that exist in the site and proposes new ones that take advantage of existing institutions and areas of interest, generating a network of nodes that define the proposed border and integrates the natural park into the city's identity. Based on the main strategies proposed, as well as the existing conditions, we define the east sector of the site as the test ground area, understanding it as the sector with existing metropolitan infrastructure, as well as potential nodes, non-urbanized areas, and less consolidated settlements near internal rivers and the canyon's border. This sector also comprises the main strategies of the proposal, including alternative mobility systems that look towards reaching limits and connecting with La Barranca, nodes within the protective border that both connect with the city and with the natural reserve, taking advantage of heritage sites and integrating existing centers, and the definition of a system of green and mobility corridors that create a network of connections and public spaces for the community and the city. Consequently, we selected two sectors of interest, one on the less consolidated settlements of the existing urban layout, and the other in the area destined for expansion, to test the strategy of the macro block or macromanzana as a definition of mobility hierarchy that will enhance the existing connectivity network and transform and consolidate the existing, as well as define the new urban layout and guide the expansion, creating in both instances an opportunity to mix different densities, scales, and typologies that can coexist and benefit each other through the definition of borders of planned development that allow the internal layout of the block to develop in a progressive, self-constructed manner, as well as integrate natural areas and define a network of public spaces that connect with the protective border of La Barranca, creating a transition from the urban system of the city into the natural areas of the reserve. In this sense, understanding how the development of one area can inform the other and taking into account the informal armatures approach, the proposal takes into consideration the existing conditions of the non-urbanized areas in order to guide the process of expansion, using restrictions like the high-tension line that divides the area to define the main corridor, and seeking to create a continuity of public spaces from the existing urban layout towards La Barranca, defining the border as a metropolitan park that takes advantage of the views and connections to the canyon, and provides programmatic continuity, integrating the existing recreational spaces, such as the zoo and the botanic garden, into a botanical park that acts as a limit of expansion, and defines the network of corridors that integrates different densities and typologies within the same urban layout, promoting mixed uses in the area. The proposal defines a mobility network that promotes pedestrian mobility and public spaces of different scales, defining borders of higher density typologies that respond to the different conditions of the mobility corridors, creating commercial and public activity outwards that allow for the development of self-constructed settlements in the interior of the macroblocks, defining a transition between urban, local, and neighborhood scales that connect the city to the natural border, seeking to create public continuity of the space, a sequence of public and private experiences that play with the porosity of the built borders and the different densities of the proposed typologies to promote visual connections with the canyon. Defining a corridor that takes advantage of the pre-existing high-tension line restriction, acting as the main road of the mobility network, and defining transversal pedestrian connections to the public amenities within the block center, spaces of a more private quality and lower density that emulates the condition of neighborship or vecindad within the macroblock, serving as a boulevard that promotes commercial activity with mixed-use housing and integrating the different urban dynamics and densities through the public spaces, creating a sequence of spaces and activities that connect with the metropolitan scale border with a touristic, commercial, and cultural character that defines the city facade towards La Barranca, connecting the city with the park through the definition of public amenities and institutions that promotes activities related to the public space and act as stewards and custodians of the park, creating a transition to the natural habitat of the canyon through plazas, gardens, and public terraces that promotes the city's connection to La Barranca and defines the identity of the site and its inhabitants. Similarly, and looking to define the same principle of higher density borders that define the main corridor of the macroblocks, whilst internally creating a sequence of public spaces and pedestrian corridors that connects the urban grid with La Barranca, and taking into consideration the characteristics of the existing morphology of the selected area of Zapopan, the proposal seeks to guide the process of expansion of these existing settlements, defining a green system of public spaces, public amenities, and gathering places for the community, repurposing and taking advantage of existing infrastructure, and rehabilitating the existing natural resources that currently aren't integrated into the urban layout, creating a network that connects the urban grid with the reserve, defining the border as a recreational area that acts as a transition from the urban layout of the existing settlements to the natural habitat of the canyon. Based on the existing layout, the definition of public spaces determine the hierarchy of the primary mobility corridors as attractors of public activity that promote a change of urban dynamics, defining macroblocks within the existing grid that are consistent of borders of transformation that allow for new typologies, change of use or of density, whilst internally the existing streets are defined as pedestrian corridors or linear parks that consolidate the existing settlement whilst providing neighborship areas for the inhabitants. And so, understanding the public spaces as a catalyst of transformation of the urban dynamics, the system is defined by four main nodes that connect north to south and west to east, and are defined not only by open spaces, but also by public facilities or institutions that can act as custodians or stewards of these spaces, in order to avoid further expansion into existing natural systems, providing amenities for recreational, educational, and productive activities for the community in the creeks that flow into the San Juan River, that can also act as water treatment facilities to prevent pollution into the canyon's habitat, as well as defining public amenities that provide basic services for the community, taking advantage of empty areas to create a sequence of public spaces that create a transition from the main corridors into the recreational areas of the border, defining, effectively, a periphery of green or natural areas, parks or open spaces that are connected both internally and externally through the definition of these nodes, that not only seek to provide amenities and open spaces for the community, but also to promote the progressive transformation of the urban dynamics, making use of existing infrastructure to create gathering and commercial spaces that enhance, improve, and consolidate the existing urban layout, allowing for mixed typologies and different densities to be introduced in the area, as well as bigger-scale projects that seek to improve the existing community centers to both serve the local community and the rest of the city, creating a touristic, recreational, and commercial border that connects the internal system of the settlement with the protective border of La Barranca. In this sense, the strategies established in both of the sectors selected inform the development of the rest of the site. In fact, understanding this process as something that could happen either synchronically or at different points in time, and based on the existing conditions, the phases are defined by the establishment of a first catalyst that will start a process of transformation of the sector, following the definition of other attractors, such as public nodes or corridors, that will define the areas of transformation or development, and will allow for the consolidation of the area and the definition of an integral system that is part of the bigger network proposed for the rest of the site, therefore integrating and connecting the existing and proposed urban systems with the natural border of La Barranca, defining the national park as an integral value of the city and directly relating it with the identity of the site and the people that live there.